Too dark there. Hey, now we're talking. Yeah, we're live. Had to click over, and so happy Easter, everybody. Obviously, hopefully you guys got to spend time with family, which we did, and it was awesome. It was great. It's always great seeing and getting together because a lot of times you can't get together with everybody, and it's when everybody makes the effort and gets together, it's kind of cool. So cheers to you guys. It's even Easter colored. Bicycle beverage. So tonight we're going to talk about, and I know this is jumping the gun because I have like 12 other projects ahead of this, but that's what we do here. We bench race. The upcoming will be the combination of basically the Gen 2 DZ302. So what it is obviously everybody here, if you're not familiar with the DZ302, that's a combination of the 4-inch bore block back in 67, 68, and 69 that GM did for Trans Am racing. And they had a 5-liter displacement limit for the rules in the class. So they had to produce motors that were that size from the factory initially, and then later on they allowed them to destroke them. But when they first did the ruling, they would not allow that. So Chevrolet had to produce a 302 cubic inch motor or 5-liter motor. They could go up to 305. So they built a 302 combining the 4-inch bore, and then I think the 283 crank is what they used. It was a specific. People are going to tell me it's not a 283 crank. It's specific. It's a different journal size. It's a steel crank. Yada yada yada. I'm just talking about the stroke. So it's a 4-inch bore and a 3-inch stroke. Back then, that's what they built, and it's kind of legendary. And they won 2 Trans Am championships with that. Donahue, Penske, they did amazing stuff. Fast forward now to the Gen 2 version of the LT1, which they introduced in 1970. So that was a 350. So they have an LT1, a Gen 2 one that they offer, and that's the photo that I have of that intake manifold. And it was a very powerful combination, especially in LT4 guys. It was a really good small block. In fact, it probably can be argued that that's the high water mark of. It's still kind of a conventional small block, even though it had reverse cooling. But it was kind of the high water mark of the conventional small block before they switched over to the LS engine family. So it did very well. The cool thing is for us is that they built a 350-inch LT1, but they also built a small 4.3-liter V8, which is also very cool. And I have a bunch of videos up on those where we ran a bunch of tests with it. So it was a 4.3-liter. And the cool thing is that's a 3-inch stroke crank. It's also a much smaller bore than the LT1 is, but it's a 3-inch stroke crank. But the cool thing is what we want to do to make a 302, you can do that using factory parts. You can easily do it, obviously, with aftermarket parts. But the cool thing to do is we take the crank and the rods from the L99 and combine them with the pistons from the LT1 because that has the bore size that we want, and put those in the LT1 block. So you can think about it 2 ways. One, we're building a big bore version of the L99. And if somebody knows, I don't think we can bore that L99 block out and just put pistons in it and make it into the bigger. I don't know if there's enough sleeve thickness in the L99. I would think that they would have done a specific block for that, but I can't swear to that. I'm not an expert on those Gen 2 motors. So if they didn't, and you could just bore out the block, that actually would be a lot easier than having to get 2 motors and combine the 2. But it's still cool. So we can combine the 2. So if we get an LT1 and then we have the crank and rods from the L99, the 4.3-liter, we combine those, put them in the 4-inch bore block, and voila, we have a 4-inch bore and a 3-inch stroke. Basically a late model Gen 2 DZ302. So the question for tonight, and this is what the poll is going to be. So if I do, well, not if, I'm going to do that because I've wanted to do that for a really long time. So when I do that, when we combine that and make that motor, whether we bore out an L99 block or we combine it with more likely with an LT1 block, when we do that, should I run boost on it? Like, should the configuration, I was going to ask about what the configuration should be. Like, because I'm going to put it together one time, we're going to run it, and then we'll probably run, boost on it or nitrous or various things. But should we run boost on it? This should be an easy poll, I would think. Should I run boost on the Gen 2 DZ302 combo L99 plus LT1? And then if you guys want to, in the comments, you can throw in how much boost you think I should run, because, you know, that's kind of funner. So should I run boost on the Gen 2 DZ302 that I just described by combining the L99 and the LT1, basically a big bore? And I was going to tell you about the two ways to think about this. It's either a big bore L99 or it is a smaller displacement, a de-stroked LT1. So either your glass is half full or it's half empty, which depending on which direction you're going. Both of them are cool because it's a cool combination, regardless of what happens. And here's a little spoiler alert: that combination will make less power than the 350-inch version of that same motor will, but it will make more power than the small bore version of that same motor will too. So that's kind of what's going to happen. It'll still be cool and we'll still do it, but should I add a boost to that? You know, should I add a single turbo, twin turbo, or whatever? Let me know in the comments. You guys can tell me how much boost you think I could run. I wonder how many all of it comments I'm going to get. So you make sure you throw those in there, both the people that are watching the live and the people that are watching later on. So throw that comment in there. Should it be all of the boost? Should we try to break it if we can break it? You know, what should happen? When I can tell you this, when I put it together, and especially if we put it together using all the factory stuff, which I think is going to happen, I'm definitely going to, since it's going to be a part anyways, I'm going to put rain gap in it, you know, just in case. So that's the question for tonight, and I'm excited about that. I liked doing the testing on the little motor because it's even more of an other guy's combination than the regular Gen 2 LT1 is, which itself is kind of an other guy's deal, because it was built for such a short period of time, and it's also much maligned because of the OptiSpark. Everything else about the motor was really good. If you look at what a jump in power that motor was over the previous L98, it was a pretty big step up in power. And then when they really stepped up is when they made it into an LT4 motor and had better heads on it. The intake manifold was revised, but only in that it changed the basically the port entry to match those heads. They had different rockers, I think, and cam timing on the LT4. It probably was a little higher compression, I'm thinking, but it had more head flow. And so I think it made 30 or 40 horsepower more than the LT1 stuff did, putting it very close actually to what the LS family was going to be making when they introduced that. So it would be an LT4, a stock LT4 would be a good thing. I wish that I had that. I wish I could run one of those. That would be kind of cool. But I don't have a stock one of those. I did have a set of stock heads that I found, but I ended up selling those for a guy that wanted it because he was putting together an original LT4. Sorry, I'm later. We're going to big bang the 350. Well, you get to answer, and you get to answer the comment, then you get to answer the poll. If you're going to break anything, it seems you're better at it using nitrous. I know, right? I've spun cast cranks at 8,500 RPM. I'm not worried about RPM on those things. A valve train would be the thing there. Everything's better with boost. Push it till you can't push no more. It'd be nice to see the limits. Well, if you look at who are the guys that are racing the LT, excuse me, the LT base motor. What the heck is the name of them? I always forget. I think for a long time they held the stick shift record. So somebody chime in. How'd it go, the bartender? She's fantastic. I got her number. Grubworm, that's who it is. See, everybody knows. How far down the hole does the piston sit? I don't know. The deck height, the compression height is the same on the pistons, I'm pretty sure. So I don't know what the difference in the pistons. I haven't physically measured the two. I blew up or hurt the L99 that I was running, and I haven't run an LT1 for a really long time. I mean, it's been 10 or 15 years, I think, since I put an LT1 up on the dyno at Westech. But the L99 worked good for quite a while, and now I want to do this 302 combination. Loved my 396, 3875 stroke, FR210s, 242, 248. That would be a good combination. Any suggestions for an LT1 on a budget? Cam and springs are always the best thing for those factory motors. LT1 is what powers the second fastest domestic manual car on the planet. So what's the first then? Richard, I sent you questions regarding the Summit Racing Stage 4 camshaft. What's the part number on your videos? I put it in my email. I don't know what the part number was. I'd have to go back and look. I'd have to reference the specs that I put in the video and then see what part number it is. But you should be able to get it from the specs on the camshaft. LT4 also has skinny stem. And LT4 had titanium valves? I didn't know that. So far with mine, I learned that ring gap and torque heads means a huge difference between enough boost to win the 10-second class versus 11s. That would make sense. A ring gap goes a long way. Yeah, Jason, you have that motor in a Roadmaster wagon. I believe in an interview it said that the grub worm was de-stroked to 327 inch. So his has to have forged internals and stuff, right? I think the only thing stock on his is the block, right? Punching the L99 out to 4-inch bore could cause some serious heat issues. I don't know why it would if the block is the same as it is for the LT1. I don't know if the L99 and the LT1 block are the same. Maybe that's a question I can pose to Jim over at TPIS. He probably would know that. I haven't ever seen anybody talk about doing that, and I don't remember hearing any chatter about them being the same block. So it might be that they're different. If they are, and that block isn't, if they did a different casting on that block, and the cylinders are not as thick, it would be really nice if it's the same. But I don't know that they would have wanted to bore out all the other blocks that much if they started with that small of a one, because that would be more machining and it would cost more ultimately, especially if you're doing thousands and thousands of those. So I'd be kind of surprised if they're the same, but it would make our life easier, I guess. I have an LT4 with Z06 head with some assembly required. Anyone ever play with an LT5? The guys at Westech have one, and I want to run it. We just haven't been able to. I know that on the LS7 they use titanium valves, but I didn't know that they did it on an LT4. L99 block is a different casting. It's Mark 4.3 liter. Doesn't anyone in Sonic test blocks before? Grubworm runs a filled factory block. That's what I thought. They have a new LT1 style block that costs thousands. That's big money. Big money. Let's see how our poll is doing. Should I run boost on the Gen 2 DZ302 combination L99 and LT1? 87% are saying yes. Who are the 13% that are saying no, you shouldn't run boost on a combination? Fred, you're saying that the L99 has a forged steel crank? I will go out on a limb and state this. I strongly believe that the bang for the buck, the LT1 is the best option. A better option than what? A better option than the LS? The only reason I would disagree with that is I think that the LT1 can make good power, but I don't think that it responds the way that an LS does. An LT1 head doesn't flow what an LS head does, and therefore it's not going to respond to a camshaft the same way. And also, you got to work around the OptiSpark stuff. Would Corvette LT1s be better for boosted being the 4-bolt mains? I'm not worried about doing a big bang and maximum effort kind of thing. Obviously, we're not going to make what the Grubworm guys are doing because it's not going to be a dedicated build like that. But I'm not worried about whether it's a 2-bolt or a 4-bolt main for what we're doing. It should be fine. Obviously, it needs a turbo V6, a 3800 maybe. The LT1 gets a lot of hate, but with today's tech, you can build a potent and reliable engine. There's 3 or 4 different ways to ditch the OptiSpark. I've seen the upgrade that people do put LS coils on it, but again, it's not a cheap date doing that. Gen 2, LT1, AFR heads, Holley EFI. Yep. We just ran a distributor on ours because when we ran the carbureted intake manifold, the carbureted intake had a hole for the distributor. So all we had to do was take out the plug that they had in the hole there and remove that, and then use a distributor to drive. They had an oil pump drive and a plug in the lifter valley, and then all we had to do is take that out, and we could put a conventional distributor in on the carbureted intake manifold anyway. And then, as you guys saw from the video, I also just hole sawed a hole in the back of the LT1 intake manifold so I could run the distributor. It just made life easy for me. You're going to use the Opti or converting it? We'll probably convert it. I probably won't use the OptiSpark. Do Ram's horn exhaust manifolds gain like headers compared to stock manifolds, or are the Ram horns just good? I've never seen a test where a stock Ram's horn design like that Chevrolet has is any better than the other stock exhaust manifolds. That design doesn't necessarily make a better turbo manifold than a conventional one that exits out the rear. And they will not add power the way headers do because they have no runner length. They have no primary length. So they have no scavenging effect. All they are is flow. I've seen some ported versions. I think Brzezinski offered some, bigger opening and that's going to improve flow, which could help, but it'll never have the scavenging effect of a long tube header. You can run the Gen 2 LT1 with an LS, 0411 computer. Yep. I believe I said it based on the fact that I got mine for less than $300 and was so pleased about another one for the same price and the power I make with extremely basic mods. I believe it beats the LS1 price factor. It doesn't because the LS1 you can get for the same price. When I go to the wrecking yard, all of the V8s except for the big block Chevy are priced the same. So I can get an LT1 or an LS1 for the same price. And then as I said, once you go from there, the thing that you have to add to it would be a camshaft and springs, and an LS1 is going to make more power than the LT1 it's going to start out making more. And then when you add the camshaft, it's going to make even more. So if the cost of the camshaft and springs are the same, which they're going to be close, then you just have more of that. I still like the LT1. I just don't think that there's an argument to be made that if you already have one and you're upgrading that's a better deal than trying to swap an LS in. But if you're going to get them the same, I don't know how one is going to cost less than the other. and one of them is definitely going to make more power than the other one. Finishing up my 6-liter T56 swap in my 73 Maverick. If I start it on a stock tune, if you start it with a bigger cam and injectors and open headers, they run the risk of hurting anything. You could start it and see if it starts. I would not recommend driving it because you're gonna want to step on the throttle. Not very many people I know cannot do that. I can do that. I could start it up and idle it over to where we put it on the chassis dyno if it's in a car, and make sure that it is what it's supposed to be, completely tuned before ever going to wide open throttle. There are lots of guys, in fact, most people don't do that. They go out and stick their foot in it. Let's see how it feels. That's the dumbest thing ever. You shouldn't ever do that. You should do that after it's tuned, because you have no idea what the air fuel is. You have no idea what the timing. You have no idea what any of that is. Maybe the thing is just pouring fuel in there. Maybe one of the injectors just stuck open. There's all kinds of things that can happen, and you find that out. You make it right when you tune it, and then once you do that, then you get to go out and enjoy it and never hurt anything. But when you put that together with those combinations of things, it should be tuned before you're out running any kind of wide open throttle stuff. Are hooker comp headers worth the price? I don't know. Racer D, I did get your email, although I didn't see an attachment or anything that gave me a link to the video that you were talking about. My Gen 2 LT1 350 100% stock, made 554 horsepower and 860 foot-pounds. I'm waiting for the power adder to the wheels. Cam, carb, and 200 shot. Okay, so it's not stock anymore. It has a different camshaft. It has springs. It has a carbureted intake. It has a carburetor and a 200 shot. But that should be a fun deal. That should go pretty fast. Do you think a rear mount turbo is a waste of time? No, not at all. They work very well. The LT1 exhaust manifolds are rumored to be the best flowing small block Chevy factory manifolds and used to sell well to dirt track guys forced to use stock stuff. Are hooker comp headers worth the buy? Real advantage over run-of-the-mill headers? I haven't seen that. I mean, hooker comps, we use hooker headers a lot, and I like the fact that they last. Like, I mean, the hooker comps or super comps that we had for the 5-liter Ford, I mean, I think we had them for 15 years or more, and they were on and off an endless amount of motors and run an endless amount of times, and they always worked. So I think that those were impressive. I don't know if the inexpensive ones will do that. Having compared inexpensive headers and expensive ones of comparable design, they both made good power. I just don't know for how long the other ones will last. Oh, Elite. Okay, in Jamaica, the LS was double the cost. Yeah, if you have something already and it's less money, then that's perfect. The 411 PCM mod for the LT1 is the best thing. You can use the OptiSpark just like a conventional distributor and run the engine from the crank sensor signal. Turbo Mons is in the house. Just saw the first drive in Andrade Racing's YouTube channel, 350 Ols, diesel block, gas conversion. Cool. Is it worth worrying about a small crack between the valve seats on my 317 heads? Probably not. Build this LT1 with 13-to-1 compression, E85, massive solid roller, and get it to turn 10,000. See how much power you can get. Some trick flow 21-degree heads and angle mill them. No thanks. I could just take a stock motor and add boost to it, and it would make a lot more power than that. How much nitrous do you think you can run through a stock bottom end LS1? I don't know. I would add ring gap to it if I was doing it, and you haven't touched the rings. That's what's going to break. I have a 200 dry shot right through it right now. 26 degrees of timing with a 200 shot. That seems like a lot. Racer D, I sent you this modified Pontiac Pharaoh 2.5 Iron Duke, but there's no, I don't see any link there. All you have is words typed out. that doesn't tell me anything. If you have a link, if there is a video and you have a link for the video, send a link for the video. David, wish I could stay and watch. Thought I'd like and comment now. Thank you very much. And you can check it out later. 5.3 Vortec is a Holly Street Avenger 770 a good fit? Yeah, that will work good. We've run Brawler carburetors on those, and they work good too. I'm 99.5% on board with most of that. So what else? Where's the other 0.5%? Why are you holding out, man? See, my kind of guy. I just got on and saw the poll. The answer to the question, should I run boost, is always yes. See? Apparently, it's only 85% of the time yes. It's 15% is no. Pity the LT1 302 can't be run first as an LT1 350. I can run the stock 350 LT1 and see what that does. Hopefully it'll be, I mean, I could just get a running motor. I'd love to see a high compression E85 build of anything. I've seen claims that people have run absurd numbers and weren't able to get the E85 to detonate. Well, you just have to keep advancing the timing and it will detonate. 20-to-1 compression. I don't know how you could get to 20-to-1 on, that's really hard to do on any kind of realistic engine because there just isn't that much room available to do that. But E85 on an NA combination, you can go to more realistic numbers that I would be used to, 14 or 15-to-1 on some stuff, and get it to run because it has enough. E85 has enough cooling properties and octane to run a lot of boost, and even a lot of boost with fairly reasonably high compression and boost. So it works pretty well. Turbomon's standing a lot. So he's doing so standing a lot and bending and moving around, doing the porting for a few hours straight as my back, super tight. Finishing the 71 Nova that I was working on. Finally yesterday got my 15 F250 on my 05. When do you think a flat plane crank will be available for the LS? I don't know. Richard used to live in Area 51. I was Area 51 adjacent. Henderson's pretty close to that. How much horsepower can you make with 6 AN lines? It depends how much pressure you're running through the line. How much boost do you think the rods will put up with? On what kind of motor is that? Look at the Big Bang stuff, and then look at on a nitrous deal, I would run a progressive deal on the nitrous. When will we get the 302 LT1 video? Not for a while because I still have to put all that together. That's just future talk. That's just bench racing, between the dudes. I have a 96 Impala all stock with 186,000 or 18,000 miles. Wow, to get 400 horsepower at the wheels. What motor is that? Do you have a an L99 or an LT1 on it? And what does the price tag look like? 400 wheel horsepower on that motor would be difficult. It would require a very high RPM 350 or better to do a 383 NA motor or a 396 kind of stroker deal, or cam and springs and a minor amount of boost would be easy, because then you'd be more like 500 at the wheels. Can you put a 5-liter HO from the 90s Mustang in an 05 to 11? Yeah, you can. Richard, will you live stream from the dyno sometimes? I have done that quite a few times when I'm down at West Tech. Richard, can you please write part numbers on all the testing? Sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. Did you notice any appreciable power gains from polishing your head? From which one? Ported heads definitely make more power. If you improve the flow rate, you have the potential to make more power. What would be a good cam to put in an L83 Sierra? Talk to the guys at Brian Tooley. They have a good cam for that L83. I have an LT1 out of a 96 Chevy Impala. The engine was built by Golan Engines in New Hampshire. Callie's Dragon Slayer and cam. Why does it have 8.1? I don't know what pistons did they put in that. Did they make it for a blower or a turbo or something? Torque. So you're going to run 300 shot, 150 dry, 150 wet. That'll probably be a good combination. I might stagger it more toward the dry side. So do a 200 and 100, do a 100 wet and then do a 200 dry. Because the fuel doesn't like to flow through. I'm not sure what kind of intake manifold you have. If it's an LS1, those long runner manifolds, the fuel doesn't like to be evenly dispersed in all the runners. And that's where you'll run into problems where you can lean pop one of those things. If you just do the nitrous and you're injecting the fuel through the injectors or carburetor, whatever you're doing, it's a better deal. So I would recommend that. Richard, I just pulled apart my LS 5.3 to check the bearings and gap. Although the bearings look fine, should I go the extra step and replace the bearings? I wouldn't replace the bearings if they're running fine. Just clean them and oil them and put them back in. Have you ever beefed up a 4L60E after you're modified an LT1? I never have. I don't know if I would. How much do you think of the boost will the block take? I don't think that the block is going to be the problem, not judging by what Grubworm guys are doing. Theirs is a 4-bolt one, and maybe we'll get that, maybe we won't. Could a stock NA 3800 handle the 300 shot with a ring gap? I don't know. I would think that it would. I think if you put ring gap in it and you had head studs and good gaskets in it, I think it probably would. It obviously handles an extra 300 horsepower worth of other kind of power adder. So I think, and I think especially if that was a progressive shot, that it probably you'd probably have a better choice. It's down and under. Here's plus or minus 5%. The 0.5%. I'm cool with that, Dean. Do you recall which cam you used in the L99 for testing? Yeah, the videos are up. We ran quite a few of them. I ran some TPIS cams. I ran a comp cam, if I remember right. And you are gone because I'm not really concerned about your political views. whether they align with mine or not, this isn't a place to air your political nonsense. Richard or anyone else, what ECUs are you using? Is anyone using the old school stock ECU remap? I'm using a piggyback and considering a change within budget, please. What's your favorite LT1 application? My favorite one is a 1970 Z28. But after that, I'm more of an engine guy than I am a platform guy. How much spray to be equal to a 4.8? How about an L99 crank and a 5.7? We talked about that earlier, that's what the 302 would be. Let's see. How much horsepower do you think my Hyundai 2.54 would make with an open gas pump valve and hammering it off a huge nitrous bottle? .408 Mopar stage 1 EQ heads. I don't think that the EQ heads are going to limit that 408 with a Victor Jr. intake. Oh, and you are going to run a turbo? Okay, then you don't need a very big cam. I think for a 408, I would go something like a 230, 236 probably. I've seen people take the 5.0s out of the newer F-150s and newer Mustangs, and I've heard they just drop in, but I was curious about the old 5-liter HO if they connect to the V6 trans. I don't know. I don't think that the bell housing is the same on a V6, on a newer V6, as it is the older 5-liter HO. And the older 5-liter HO is probably not going to make as much power as that newer V6 does. What are your thoughts on the GM LS hot cam? I don't honestly remember trying one of those. I'd have to go back and look through my data to see if I've actually run one of those. I think way back, I think maybe in a Recport headed motor, I ran one of those, and I think I have data on it. Is the L99 capable of more RPM because of its displacement? No, not really. It has a short stroke, and that's why we're building this DZ302, because everyone knows the DZ302s from the past because they have that short stroke and they ran to, whatever, pick the number, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 RPM because of the short stroke. Well, the 283 already had that, and the 283 was not known as a high RPM motor, but somehow miraculously the 302 was. Now it had a bigger bore and it had better heads because it had the fuelie heads rather than the PowerPort heads. But that was not the limiting factor. The stroke was not the limiting factor for RPM. It's all valve train, and in this case also cylinder head and camshaft and stuff. And it had a dual plane intake, which, as we know, is not ideal for high RPM. I've been told to get aluminum heads to get more horsepower, but I was also told they crack faster. No, they don't. You don't have to worry about that. Especially look at all the factory stuff is all aluminum heads anymore. Very few iron heads being run on production stuff. So aluminum heads on if you have an LT1 or an L99, a set of aluminum LT1 heads is a good option. Turbo Monza. I'm going to give away the Nova, so you don't need to come down and help with that. If not EQ heads, and which ones? I think if you're doing a small block Mopar, one of the other aluminum heads, does Strickflow make some for that? I think that they do, or the RPM heads, or the Performer Elbrock heads. Something other than the EQ stuff. The EQ stuff, I think, is going to be a step up from factory heads, but not what other things will do. Richard, what did you get the total engine airflow ported 706 heads to flow? You can take a look at the video. I think that they're in the 315 to 320 kind of range, if I remember right. We can look that up. They have flow numbers on there when Brian was there. Total engine airflow, CNC ported heads. Let's see. Products. Custom ported heads, GM53. So a stage 2 LS2, LS6, which is a 243 head, flows 320 at 600 and 260 on the exhaust and 308 at 500. So it flows pretty well. And I'll see, I thought that the, I'll see they have a stage 2 5.3. I thought that these were comparable. Yeah, 312 at 600 and 304 at 550, 298 at 500. And they used, this is tested on a 3900 bore, and they used a 204 intake and a 155 exhaust. Yeah, a 1550. So their stuff flows pretty well. And not only does it flow well and make the numbers that they're saying, at least the flow numbers, it also translates pretty well into power. Can we see some Mazda 4 2.3, 2.5 videos? I've only ever run one of the Mazda Speed 3s on the chassis dyno, and we did an upgrade with the guys from CX Racing. We put a bigger intercooler upgrade on it, and I think that they turned the boost up on that. Is there a preferred ECU for those on boost with an LT1 that's not an extremely expensive option? I don't know. I would be the wrong guy to ask that. Maybe a Mega Squirt might be an inexpensive option. I just don't know about the timing part of it. Michael, you could on a 383 LT4 with 8.1 to 1, you could run a lot of boost on it. Bad boys, bad boys. Are you going to use stock OptiSpark with boost? Probably not. I'm hoping, I don't know if we'll run boost on the LT5. That's not my motor, and I think that probably has a lot of value to somebody redoing one of those vehicles, because there's not a lot of them, obviously. Interested in following 302 build, picked up an L99, thinking it was a 350, was going to use rotating assembly and my 4-bolt 350. Disappointed, but I learned about using the part for 302. You can do, you can use the Vortec block and then that L99 crank will go in that Vortec block. So you don't have to use the LT based blocks, because it will also go in there. That way you can run a standard cooling passage and run other head configurations that are not specific to the Vortec family or specific to the LT family. Richard was wondering what the best torque intake for a 350 Vortec. I don't know about the EFI ones, because I haven't tested a lot of, or any of, I haven't tested even a factory one on the engine dyno. But the dual plane obviously works really well if you're running a carbureted one. So Google's looking for a 92 millimeter LS throttle body. The LT4 block will split before the parts break. Oh, but yeah, if he's got forged internals, I see. Short or long stroke for piston slap. Heard both arguments. Bore size matters. If the long stroke brings the piston out of the farther out of the sleeve at bottom dead center, then you have problems. Chevy High Performance did a 302 Chevy with an XL DFI and a Lingenfelter Super Ram back in the day. 560 horsepower with a with a Vortec. Okay. I was gonna say that seems like a lot. Just a tip, the Ford 2.5 has stronger revs than the 2.3, so whatever boost they push the speed up to, the Duratec 2.5 will handle more and will have more torque. And it will, because it's a bigger motor, so it will start out with more, and it'll have, that way you can run a bigger turbo and have it spool up. I know that the guys at the show shop used to swap the 3-liter short block into the 2-liter or 2.5-liter Contour SVT motors and put all the Contour SVT stuff on top of that to have a stroke or SVT Contour, which is pretty cool. They felt a lot sportier, lots more torque. You know, it's the big block SVT Contour. Richard, what's the best combo for an LQ4 for torque? That would be a small cam like the Truck Norris cam or a torque cam. Change out the 317 heads for 799s or 706s, long tube headers. Keep the truck intake manifold and then a tune, and away you go. Everything except maybe people is better with meth. Water meth injection. How much boost is a lot to those? Do you know any cheap pistons for the Series 2 3800 that have been modified to be stronger? I don't know of any pistons at all for the 3800. I have not looked for forged pistons for that motor. I haven't done any research on that. Our stock Gen 3, man, why do I click on that? 5.3-liter valve springs capable of 550 lift. No, they're not. They're barely and might not even be capable of 500 lift because they're designed for the LM7 camshaft, which isn't anywhere near that. Only the later LS3 style LY6, only those valve springs will run 550 lift. But those are cheap and easy to find. What is the best EFI system? I don't know. I only ever test with Fast and Holly and the MS3 Pro, but I haven't run the MS3 Pro on a big block. And any EFI system that allows you to program the right air, fuel, and timing is good for power. Does the L99 bore out to the same as LT1? We don't know. I don't know that. I'm assuming that they're different blocks, so maybe not. If you take an LT1 and convert it to not use the OptiSpark, is it still an LT1? Yes, it is. It still has an LT1 block, an LT1 internals, an LT1 intake manifold, and LT1 heads and reverse cooling. And so if you change the spark, it's that's probably fine. I heard the automatic Taurus had a 3.2. They had a 3.4 V8, I know. And maybe they did a bigger one in the automatics. Have you ever tested a 377 based on a 400 small block? I've heard they're good for high RPM or circle track. Well, the reason that they would run high RPM is because of the camshaft and the springs and the rocker arms and all that stuff. They have a bigger bore because it's a 4125 bore. Westech has one that is 372 inches because it's not overboard, which is how they get the 377. They have a Dart SHP block, and it works really well. But it's most of the time, depending on what camshaft and stuff that they put in there, it's in the low to mid 500 range. Shadow Ops wants the NA version of the DZ302. Are LS questions okay in the LT1? Yeah, this is not just the LT1 chat. It's a chat. So everything's open. If you want to talk about Chevy Sprint turbos, that'd be okay. The L99 only had cast iron heads. Does your 2.2 liter have low impedance injectors, and can all the aftermarket ECUs drive them? I can put whatever injector I want in the 2.2, but the Holly will run low impedance injectors. I just emailed you $1 million idea. So why didn't you just run with it then? If it's $1 million idea, you should grab that idea and go get the $1 million. Was the SHO motor based on the 3-liter Cologne V6 in the Ranger? I don't know. I thought it was a Duratec motor, if that's what that one is. Turbo Monza, didn't I already answer that about the flow numbers for the 243 and the 706 heads? I did. 315 to 320 CFM. Richard, my LS1 blew up. I just got a Texas Speed 6 Summit lift cam and was sweet. I ordered a Dart 4-25 bore block, intended on going with a 4-inch stroke. What heads to use? It depends on how much power you want to make. With a 4-125 bore, that opens up head choices to a lot of different things, including LS7 heads. So if you want to make a lot of power and run RPM, you can go with heads that flow, over 400 CFM. If you build the rest of the motor to take advantage of that. There's also really good flowing LS3 heads. Mast has some good stuff. So Ken is verifying that automatic SHOs did come with 3.2 liters because they were wanting, comparable performance, and they weren't getting it with the automatic and the high RPM 3-liter. If I did hear you, I got to. So Dean is coming in with the difference in the bore spacing on the block. It was not a Cologne based motor. 40 psi boost is a lot of boost. So Google, if you have that issue, I would check the tune on it maybe. Michael, thank you very much. Todd's in the house. I have my LT1 in a Corolla. Nice. Oh, it came from a hearse? I don't know about that motor. 799 heads, Daniel, are good. They're like a 243 head. They're not an LS6 head because they don't have the same valves, but they flow very well and they can make a lot of power. Should the 06 L33 go in my 07 Silverado NA with cam, or go into the 72 Cutlass with the 7.3 liter turbo? Both good options, actually, but I would put a cam and springs in it and then the turbo. Richard, did you see the 706 versus 821 comparison video on Engine Masters? I haven't seen it, but I remember talking to Brule about the data. I thought that when they did the test that they didn't use, I thought that they used Engine Quest versions of those heads. Yeah, 243 and 821. Yeah, that's the one that I was talking about. But those were not factory heads. Those were an aftermarket version that the aftermarket company told them that these are direct duplicates of those heads, which I've already tested both those heads. That video is up. So I know what they do. I did 799s versus 821s. They might even have been 823s because they were LY6 heads. But I've done that, and I compared. Also, I had 706 heads, which we compared to both of those at the time on the 6-liter LY6. And so the results for those didn't come out the way that I suspect that they should have. So to me, it indicates that those heads are not exact duplicates of the factory ones. Richard, have you heard there's an aftermarket block option for the LT1? I have not seen that. I have an 1320. I have an 01 Tahoe with an Elm 7. I've done full bolt-ons, 224, 230 cam on a 110. Is there a better head I should run besides my current 862s? There are lots of better cylinder heads that will make more power. I don't know what intake manifold you have, but if you're going to, you could put a 231 cam in it if you want more power. You could put ported versions of that head or a 706 head. I don't think stepping up to a 799 or 243 head is going to do much of anything on that combination. You do have more power available to you from an intake swap. So a fast intake would be the best. A Trailblazer SS going up from the stock truck intake manifold is going to be worth between the stock truck intake and the fast is going to be the Trailblazer SS. Really good ported heads, like ported versions of that, like we were talking about from Total Engine Airflow, those are really good. They have bigger valves and stuff. Or the Trick Flow or the Airflow Research 205 heads designed for that small bore, another good option. Hey, just joined. Are you going to run boost on the 2nd gen LT1? I've been waiting for this. I do want to. So make sure you get up there and vote. So we have, wow, we have 336 votes and 225 people here. So that's awesome. Demon Tech, thank you very much. Oh, the trains are calling, man. Be safe out there. And Google, Richard has single-handedly helped thousands of people build their engines, including me. So here's a tip. Thank you very much. I'll make sure to buy the missus a frosty cold beverage. You're going to give the Nova away. It is a 72, I believe, and I'm going to give it away. We're going to do it online. I'm just still trying to figure out exactly how to do it yet. But somebody, more than likely, somebody from the live feed is probably going to win it. Because, you know, those are my peeps. And only 7 likes. Do you stick with local trans shops or send it out to your specialist? Well, I haven't done that. So I haven't used one yet. Don't tell her about the bartender. She knows. Have you seen small block Chevy blocks where the deck accepts LS heads? Yeah, I've seen the LS neck stuff, and then they had is that the one that has the bottom end that's basically like a small block so that they have better cylinder communication and better oiling? That's the one I'm thinking of. In the future, do you plan on doing videos on a 7.3 liter? I don't have one of those. It would be nice, but there's some really good stuff up on YouTube already. I die from excitement if I won the Nova. But the thing with the Nova is, well, somebody will have to actually get it running and make it work. 87%. I'm on the winning team. See, Dean, you need to get him up to 99.5%. The Motown block, okay. And that's different than the Dart Ellis Next block, right? Michael, I know the feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about when you don't want to win it because you already have enough projects. 2 more minutes because it's, it's Sunday night. You guys got to go and you guys got to celebrate Easter. So right now I'm going to close out the poll at 87% saying yes, definitely run boost, and 13% saying no. So what's up with the 13 there? 352 votes. I like that. Andrew, welcome. What cam should I run in my LT1 where I can still run on the street? Something in the 224 or less degrees of duration at 50 on the intake side. TPIS has some good cams for those. You should do an Iron Duke buildup. I agree with that. Very good friend of mine, David Page. David is awesome people. Sent me your channel for a long time ago. I was very thankful. Happy Easter to you, Brody. And if you're ever back on posting on David's stuff, David is good people. He's awesome. I've known him for a long time. The $10 is towards you testing a rotary. I do want to test a rotary. Oh, I'll get it running. I have 3 little brothers, and we all work on cars together in our barn. It'll be done pretty quick. Would you put a rotary in it? I'd build a Nova and give it back. Nice. Now, if we could only get the votes converted to likes. Yeah, when you're doing the vote, you should also hit the like button. Do both of them. They go together. Take a look at the L8T 6.6 liter truck engine. That is cool. Guys have made big power on those already. LT1 mild versus wild video. We'll do NA versus boosted, right? At least according to the poll. This love for the Iron Duke is odd, but I like weird stuff, though. We used to toss them, make way for something better. Lots of guys did that. I mean, take a look at, and I went through this, and this will be the last comment for tonight. I got to get going, but I went through that when I bought my my Civic VX, because back in the day when people were, B series VTEC swapping Civics, they would get either a single cam VTEC and take that out and put a twin cam VTEC in, or the better deal was get a VX because it was the lightest, lightest hatch chassis. And they would just take the D16 or D15Z motors. I think that's what the VX was, and just throw them away. I mean, they're just stacked up on the side. I remember going over to the shops in Anaheim, and they were. I said, "What are all those?" Those are those stupid VX motors that we just take out and throw away. And now I think back and it was so hard for me to try to. I wanted to get a spare one that I could build up, and to try to find one of those was ridiculous because everybody had just thrown them away. And then once gas prices got high, people were hoarding them, and it was terrible. My LTX 396 has a 236, 248. That's a big camshaft. FR 220, 12.5 to 1 compression. Yeah, that should work good. You need a male Jeep, yep. Said you didn't know about my engine origins. It's an LT57 LT1 from a mid-70s Cadillac Fleetwood hearse. Bought the entire hearse to do the swap. Cool. Oh, TGE Corolla, actually. Very nice. I like the Corollas. I just didn't know that they were putting them in the Cadillac hearses. I didn't know what engine configuration was used in that particular chassis. Turbo would kill the essence of the LT350. Might as well just drive a Tesla. Wow. Don't sugarcoat it. You should really just step up and tell us how you feel. Thanks, Todd. Happy Easter. Okay, you guys, happy Easter. And everybody, make sure to take a look at all the videos I have up, because a lot of times guys will have questions on stuff that already have videos and already have the answer up there. So I'm surprised that you haven't seen them. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow.